You're on the train going home and it's a very sexy scene. Well, that's not funny, because there is no sex on the train. When Diane Lane was 14, she was on the cover of Time magazine. By the time she was 18, she was a millionaire with an angelic face and a teenage star that Hollywood was chasing. But as she got older, she became quieter, and it wasn't until she was 59 that she finally admitted she had affairs with both Timothy Hutton and Christopher Atkins. Many people have long thought that Diane Lane had two co-stars who were involved in a scene in Unfaithful that people thought involved real sex. Diane Lane has played dozens of emotionally complex roles, been through 2 failed marriages, been arrested, and been the subject of many rumors that were never addressed. But who is Diane Lane behind those sad eyes? This is the story that has never been told fully, and you won't want to miss it. Diane Lane was born on January 22, 1950. Colleen Lee Farrington, also known as Colleen Price, was a nightclub singer and model who was in the Playboy Miss October 1957 centerfold. Her father, Burton Eugene Lane, was an acting coach in Manhattan who ran a theater workshop with John Cassavetes, worked as a taxi driver, and later taught humanities at City College of New York. Diane was only 13 days old when her parents split up. Her mother moved to Mexico and filed for divorce, but she kept custody of her until she was 6 years old. After moving to Georgia, she gave Diane to her father and lived with him in New York for many years, going from one residential hotel to another and often riding with him in his taxi every day. Diane's childhood was marked by rides across Manhattan in an old cab, irregular schooling, and an unusual upbringing. She didn't grow up in stability, but in small stages and the bohemian life of artists. It was a time that forced her to mature quickly and become independent by the age of 15. Declaring herself free from her father, Diane flew to Los Angeles for a week with Christopher Atkins, her co-star and friend from Child Bride of Short Creek. Diane would later say that it was a risky thing for a girl who had too much freedom too soon. When she got back to New York, she moved in with a friend's family, paid her own rent, and finished high school through a correspondence program. But in 1981, her mother suddenly reappeared and took her back to Georgia. Diane didn't talk to her mother for 3 years after that incident, until they finally made up. While she was living with her Pentecostal grandmother in Georgia, Diane sometimes went to the town of BAU, where she learned to live simply away from the chaos. She talked about eating salted meat butter, fixing lawnmowers, and living without any stress. For her, it was a way to stay calm and grounded in the high-pressure world of Hollywood. Diane Lane's parents' divorce, unstable living situations, estrangement from her mother, and having to grow up quickly all helped shape her into an independent woman who is wary of the media and always makes a clear distinction between her real life and the role she plays. Diane Lane started her film career at age 13 in 1979, starring opposite the legendary Laurence Olivier in a romantic comedy. The movie wasn't just a stepping stone. It was an explosion that made Diane Lane famous across the country overnight on screen. She was a cute kid, but she was a real actress with a teenage body, expressive eyes, nuanced emotions, and a depth of feeling far beyond her years. Less than a year later, she became the center of attention when she was on the cover of Time magazine's August 13, 1979 issue with the headline, "Hollywood's Whiz Kid." The magazine called her a fresh breeze in an era of movies that were lacking in naturalism and instinct. People didn't fall in love with her because she was perfect. They liked her because she was honest and pure. Diane Lane didn't just read lines, she lived in every scene and made adults and kids believe every emotion was real. When she was only 14, Diane had already earned the trust of the audience, which is something that many actors spend their whole career trying to get. That brilliant start would help her earn Hollywood's rarest currency, patience and respect. Soon after, Diane continued to appear in a string of major films like Touched by Love and Six Pack, then reached her peak with movies like Rumblefish, The Outsiders, Streets of Fire, and The Cotton Club. Many of these were directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who gave her 3 roles in a row, which was a huge compliment for a teenage actress. By the time she was 18, Diane Lane was a millionaire thanks to her high salaries, busy film schedule, and constant appearances on TV and in movies. But as her fame grew, Diane also had to deal with the bad parts of fame. As a teenager, Diane was often linked romantically with co-stars Matt Dillon, Michael Pear, and Richard Gere because of how well they worked together on screen. She had to publicly deny these rumors or keep quiet to protect her private life, which she didn't want shared. Simply because I play someone's lover in a movie doesn't mean I love them in real life, but a lot of people don't get that. Also, most of the roles she got during this time were variations on the ideal girlfriend, which led to her being typecast, and rarely people started to blur the line between Diane Lane the actress and the character she played, which made her stay away from the media and pick more carefully about the scripts she worked on. Diane Lane burst into Hollywood by becoming a star right away, which was impressive but risky, and she had to learn quickly that being famous isn't the same as being understood, and that being a great actress isn't enough. You also have to know how to survive in a world eager to write your story for you afterward. Diane Lane moved into a new phase of her career where she didn't just act, but demanded to be heard as a fully formed artist. In 2002, she starred in Adrian Lyne's Unfaithful as Connie Sonnen, a wife who cheats not out of lust but because she feels deeply alone and disconnected in an otherwise seemingly perfect life. It was the first time Diane was given such a complex, multi-layered, and people still talk about the scene where Connie sits on a train after her first affair with trembling hands, dazed eyes, and shallow breaths as a perfect example of acting through silence. Years later, what not many people know is that the scene wasn't even in the original script. In an interview with the Jess Cagle Show, Diane said, "We had finished the shot and were bringing the train back to the station when Adrian Lyne said, 'Just shoot something.' I didn't ask him anything, we filmed it in one take and never did it again on Late Night with Conan O'Brien." She laughed and said, "There's no sex scene on the train, but everyone thinks there is. That's the power of emotion and the lens." Her role as Connie earned her a nomination for an Academy Award and the Actress of the Year Award at the Hollywood Film Awards, but more importantly, it changed the public's view of her as an actress. No longer a teenage girlfriend defined by any male co-star, Diane Lane didn't slow down after Unfaithful. Less than a year later, she was back in the big screen with Under the Tuscan Sun, 2003, a very different movie that took her career to even greater heights. In it, she played Frances, a middle-aged woman who just got divorced and decides to leave her old life in the U.S. to buy a run-down villa in Tuscany and start over. Frances wasn't born strong. She was someone who was thrown to the bottom and forced to become strong. Frances wasn't looking for love. She was looking for herself. Diane Lane based her character on a real person. In an interview on Late Night with Conan, she said that filming in Tuscany seemed like a dream vacation at first, but after 5 weeks, it got too much for her, she said. "I had eaten all the wine, all the olive oil, all the pasta, and I missed my daughter so much that I just wanted to fly home. I cried. I didn't want to be in paradise anymore." The role earned her a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress. In a musical or comedy, but more importantly, Frances, a woman who comes back from heartbreak strong without masking it, became a new symbol for middle-aged women in Hollywood. Diane Lane portrayed rebirth in a very human way, slowly, awkwardly, but true. With Under the Tuscan Sun, Diane was no longer just an actress who had grown out of her teenage fame, but a grown woman who connected with a whole generation of women who were searching for themselves after loss. In Tuscan Sun, Diane Lane didn't just play the same character, she went into the world of quiet, flawed women whose inner lives were full of silent rebellion. In A Walk on the Moon, 1999, she played a wife who is slowly drifting away from the marriage she once chose, while her husband is away at work and the summer vacation becomes empty. Diane's character quietly betrays him not because the lover is irresistible, but because she no longer sees herself in the quiet life of a devoted wife. The movie has no dramatic confrontations, just the eyes of a woman who knows she's doing the wrong thing, but can't stop. Diane was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award for this role, but more importantly, it was a turning point in her acting style, using emotion instead of dialogue. In Secretariat 2010, Diane played Penny Chenery, a middle-aged housewife who reluctantly takes over her father's horse farm in the male-dominated world of professional horse racing, where men make all the decisions and women are expected to stay quiet. Penny not only Secretariat lives and goes on to become one of the best racehorses in American history, this role broke age-based stereotypes and was Diane's quiet statement, "I don't play the lover anymore, I play the leader." Then there was Trumbo 2015, where Diane moved out of the middle of the screen to play Cleo Fincher, the wife of screenwriter Dalton Trumbo during the Hollywood Blacklist era. This wasn't a role meant to make you feel sad. Cleo was the kind of woman you rarely see on film, silently carrying the consequences of her husband's decisions without complaining or running away. Diane played that with suffocating resolve. She didn't have to say a word. She just stood there and carried the weight of her character. In addition to playing strong women in silence, Diane also went back to romance in Nights in Rodanthe, 2008, reuniting with Richard Gere after more than 20 years. This time, they weren't passionate young lovers, but two adults who had been hurt and were looking for trust in each other. Diane and Gere acted as if they'd once been in love. People believe they loved each other in real life because that kind of chemistry doesn't need to be proven. It shows in every glance and the long silences shared between two souls trying to heal. For many years, Diane Lane kept up a calm and reserved public image. She was never one for red carpet drama or controversial statements. She was seen as the type of artist who lived for her craft and avoided scandal. But in 2005, during an interview with Esquire magazine, Diane made an unexpected public appearance. Many people were shocked when she finally broke her long-held silence and said, "I had affairs with both Timothy Hutton and Christopher Atkins." She didn't try to hide it or put the blame on anyone else. She said it straight out as if shedding a heavy burden. That admission didn't just shock the media, it also made people think about years of romantic rumors that had been going around about her since the 1980s. Speculations that were once brushed off about Matt Dillon, Michael Pear, and Richard Gere suddenly took on a new meaning. But what made this confession really hit home was, it wasn't the names Timothy Hutton and Christopher Atkins that caught people's attention. It was the contradiction that showed a woman who played characters hurt by betrayal had crossed that very line herself. This turned Diane Lane, who had been seen as a symbol of honest emotion for a long time, into a figure with more layers of right and wrong, victim and transgressor, reality and act. Some fans were let down by this, but others saw her honesty as proof that she wasn't acting, she was living, even when the truth wasn't pretty. People were always interested in Diane Lane's personal life, but Christopher Lambert was the one she stayed with the longest, and who still made her smile whenever she talked about him. They met in Paris in 1984 while she was promoting a movie, but both of them were at the top of their careers. She was a rising Hollywood star, and he was a European star. It didn't take long for them to fall in love across continents, and 4 years later, in 1988, they got married. Maybe that's why Diane Lane's marriage is remembered as one of the few peaceful times in her often tumultuous life. They had a daughter named Eleanor Jasmine Lambert in 1993, who Diane would later call the guiding light in all of her life decisions. But like many couples in the entertainment industry, Diane and Lambert couldn't escape the stresses of long distance, busy schedules, and the clash of different cultures, and they got a divorce in 1994 after 6 years of marriage with no children. After the divorce, both Diane Lane and Christopher Lambert went their separate ways and started new relationships. Diane Lane married actor Josh Brolin in 2004, and Christopher Lambert married actress J.M. Sheeha in 1999, but the marriage only lasted a year. From 2007 to 2014, he dated actress Sophie Marceau. What's interesting is that Diane never said bad things about Lambert. She often said, "We truly loved each other, but sometimes love alone isn't enough." What's admirable is that even though they were no longer together, they stayed friends and co-parented their daughter like true teammates. Not every relationship ends in loss. Diane and Christopher Lambert's ended with acceptance and growth instead of anger. That's how Diane Lane chooses to live her life, taking responsibility and never blaming others. It took her almost 10 years to open her heart again, and when she did, she chose Josh Brolin, an actor known for his rugged roles. They got engaged in July 2003 and married on August 15, 2004. From the outside, they looked like the perfect couple. Both had been through heartbreak, were mature, and acted like they were breathing oxygen. But just over 4 months after the wedding, the relationship hit its first rough patch. On December 20, 2004, Diane Lane called the police after a heated argument with Brolin at their home, and Brolin was arrested on a misdemeanor charge of domestic battery. The charge quickly got the attention of the media. Diane Lane didn't press charges, and their spokesperson later said the incident was a misunderstanding. There were no court proceedings and no one was held publicly responsible, but the couple's image was changed. Lane didn't say anything to the press. She didn't accuse or defend herself in the media. She stayed silent. After that, Diane Lane seemed to withdraw even more, avoiding public events and spending more time being a mother in the calm center of her home. The marriage lasted almost a decade. In the end, Diane was the one who chose to end the relationship. She and Brolin filed for divorce in February 2013, and it was finalized on November 27 that same year. Neither of them said bad things about the other in public, and there were no legal battles or post-divorce media campaigns. Everything happened quietly, just like Diane had always dealt with pain without making a fuss. After the divorce, both Diane Lane and Josh Brolin went on with their lives and careers. Brolin went on to have more success as an actor, and he also said that he was following a number of drunken incidents. Diane Lane had been sober since 2013. Her first marriage ended in mutual respect, and her second marriage showed signs of stress and emotional limits. Diane Lane never said she was a victim, but her decision to step back, stay silent, and walk away was the clearest statement she could make about self-respect and quiet strength. On screen, Diane Lane often plays women who endure, who wrestle with emotion, and who carry deep meaning, from the tormented Connie and unfaithful son to the reborn Frances in Under the Tuscan Sun, or Martha Kent, the personification of silent sacrifice, but she doesn't bring those feelings home when the cameras stop rolling. Diane Lane is a different person in real life. On a talk show, she laughed when asked about her cooking skills and said, "I'm only good at playing someone who can cook in movies. In real life, I've bought takeout and pretended I made it myself." Diane doesn't try to be perfect, which is what makes her so relatable. An Oscar-nominated actress who was once on the cover of Time magazine as a pull, but also someone who has messed up a toaster and couldn't tell a chicken egg from a duck's egg, Diane Lane revealed in a 1995 Playboy interest, "I'm obsessed with thigh-high boots. I have a whole collection of high heels. I love the feeling of being lifted a few inches." When she's not playing a role, Diane Lane enjoys collecting old furniture. Diane Lane enjoys walking, practicing yoga, riding horses, and spending as much time as she can with her daughter Eleanor. She doesn't care about fame or following trends. She just lives her life on her own terms. Maybe that's why people always feel like Diane Lane is so real, whether she's on or off screen. She doesn't try to create an image, she just lives as herself, which can be a little strange or weird at times, but never fake. Unlike many Hollywood stars who turn to the media to bare their souls, Diane Lane takes a different path. She doesn't. Some people say that kind of silence is weak, but Diane sees it as strength. She stays quiet after a breakup not because she has nothing to say, but because she doesn't think anyone else needs to know. She's been through 2 failed marriages, an arrest that caused a lot of and a career-long swirl of romantic rumors. but she still keeps a private space that the press can't get to and where fame has no power over her. A lot of people remember stars by how loud they were. Diane Lane decided to leave her mark through silence, not a scandal. There are no huge box office hits or over-the-top media presences for Diane Lane, just a woman who steps in front of the camera, speaks with her eyes, and turns pain into art. In 2005, Which One ranked her 79th on their list of the 100 greatest child stars, recognizing an undeniable truth. That same year, she was also named 7th on the list of the most attractive stars. Diane was over 40 not because she was trying to fit beauty standards, but because getting older gave her strength, experience, and a unique aura that made people love her. This is why Diane Lane never plays the same role twice. Whether she's Connie and Francis's cheating wife in Under the Tuscan Sun or Martha Kent in the DC Universe, each woman has her own story full of scars, contradictions, and light. Diane doesn't paint her characters, she peels them back layer by layer, fear by fear, giving the audience a raw, relatable reflections of themselves. Many actresses have successful careers after age 40, but Diane Lane is different. She hasn't just lasted, she's changed. She doesn't fight for attention or rebrand herself as a feminist icon. She doesn't make big statements. Her quiet voice, which isn't tied to any trend or claimed in the name of anything, is her most powerful. Few people know that Diane Lane also volunteers with Higher International to help fight global poverty. There are no big announcements or public donation drives, just calm. There aren't any Golden Globes to measure Diane Lane's legacy. Instead, it's the trust that the public has in her every time she shows up. When she cries, we hurt. When she's quiet, we understand. When she walks away, we miss her. And that's something that not many people in the entertainment business can keep up for over 40 years. Diane Lane is no longer the focus of tabloid romances or big-name movie roles. Diane Lane has chosen a slower, quieter, and more self-directed way of life, just like she has for the past 40 years. She still acts, but not to stay famous. It's what she does for a living. On TV, Diane made a big impression as a sassy politician in House of Cards, 2018, and more recently as Slim Keith, a famous figure in New York's high society, in Feud, Caput vs. the Swans, 2024. The latter earned her an Emmy nomination, proving that Diane Lane isn't just surviving in Hollywood, she's changing what it means to be an adult with many layers. Diane, the fearless actress, doesn't live in a fancy house or on noisy social media. Instead, she lives a simple life. She does yoga every morning, rides horses on the weekends, and walks whenever she can. She collects old furniture, likes flower arrangements, gardening, and reading. In an interview, Diane said that keeping her mind and body healthy every day is more important to her than being in the spotlight. Above all, she spends as much time as she can with her daughter Eleanor Jasmine Lambert, who was born in 1993 from her first marriage to Christopher Lambert. Eleanor is now a model and freelance writer. She didn't go into acting like her mother did, but she still has the spirit of an independent artist, having been in Vanity Fair #1 and fronted several fashion campaigns in New York. Diane Lane once said that Eleanor is her soulmate and the reason she doesn't lose herself in a world full of noise. At 60, Diane Lane doesn't want to hold on to her youth. She once said that every wrinkle is a memory in a business that is obsessed with youth. Diane Lane doesn't believe in plastic surgery or chasing ideals. Instead, she sees aging as a part of the journey. She is beautiful, complex, and full of experience. Diane Lane doesn't need to call herself a legend. Just look at how she has changed over the years, from the 13-year-old girl on the cover of Time magazine to the 60-year-old woman sitting calmly on an Emmy-nominated set. Some talents don't need noise to be remembered. She is still beautiful. Hollywood is glitzy and picky, but Diane Lane wears every wrinkle and scar as a badge of honor. She is living proof that natural beauty and a strong spirit will always be in style. What do you think? Is Diane Lane an underrated powerhouse of an actress, or just a teenage star who once burned bright and faded? Which of her roles made the biggest impression on you, and what is it about her as a person that touches your heart? Do you have the courage to tell her? Leave a comment below and tell us what's on your mind. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring portrait. We have more stories to tell about stars who don't just shine, but show others the way. Tap the video on the screen to keep exploring these amazing journeys.